Hey, this is David with EV World News, and today I've got something a little different. We're going to do a top 10 EV news articles of the week, and we're going to start adding this into our regular list. So I'm going to go ahead and get started today. My first one is kind of interesting because a lot of people, especially from the United States, are probably not familiar with BYD, which is a big Chinese EV manufacturing company. And 8% of the company is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is based out of Omaha, where I live. And that makes it kind of an interesting that it does have quite a bit of U.S. investment. And if you don't know who Berkshire Hathaway is, that's Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who are, two really well-known and respected people in the stock market industry. Berkshire Hathaway had 30% year-over-year gains for like 30 years. So at one point, Warren Buffett was the richest man in the world. Anyways, here, big news from BYD. BYD produces its 6 millionth plug-in vehicle. Now, they are neck and neck with Tesla in sales of pure battery electric vehicles, and they have long been the world leader in plug-in vehicle sales, meaning they also do plug-in hybrids. And this is quite interesting. They also do, I think, hydrogen vehicles as well. The 6 millionth vehicle came in just 3 months after the 5 millionth vehicle. So they're producing a million electric vehicles per quarter. That's pretty amazing. The cumulative output increased by 20% of just 3 months. Now this is getting to be disruptive, and at some point I'm concerned we'll see BYD here in the United States. It's going to happen at some point, but they haven't come to the US yet. But it's really just an astonishing achievement for them to be doing that. They've entered 58 different countries for sales. So anyways, Tesla just passed 5 million cumulative sales. And now those are all fully electric, whereas BYDs are a mix of hybrids and electrics. But they've sold a million more vehicles than Tesla has. So I found that to be pretty impressive. Next article is from our little darling of Mullen Automotive, which I have mixed feelings and reviews on this company. They show great book value. But I've had people tell me that book value is a myth, that the assets really are overstated. And so you have to take some of that with a grain of salt. Their stock is just been pounded. It's down 99% in the past year. It's crazy how much this stock has gone down. But they had some good news. Mullen Automotive, provides an update on U.S. Customs and Border Patrol application for Class 1 EV cargo vans. So, with the use of help from Rapid Response Defense Systems, who sold thousands or led to the sale of thousands of vehicles to the federal government, they have something in where they've completed all the testing and everything and the producing the Mullen one in Tunica, Mississippi. And they have passed all the necessary federal motor vehicle safety standards and Environmental Protection Act requirements for airbags, sensors, control modules, rear view camera, front bumper system, wiring harnesses, and seating. The Mullen one will be defined as a US made end product. I suspect some parts are probably made overseas and then assembled in the US, which is really a common practice. And maybe this will do something good for Mullen. Mullen's global sourcing for the EV cargo van includes supply contracts with Tier 1 and Tier 2 OEM suppliers from South Korea, Germany, Romania, China, Canada, and the U.S. Mullen's supply chain continues to evolve with the addition of domestic suppliers and subcontractors to localize content as more EV components are added to the U.S. ecosystem. Now, Mullen's bought a lot of assets in the U.S., from everything from batteries to manufacturing facilities. So it'll be interesting to see if this company survives. They seem to have the cash on hand to survive for a while. I'll be really curious to see where this company leads. My next article, and this one is kind of an interesting, and it's a bit of a debate. It says the richest 1% generate as much in carbon emissions as the poorest two-thirds. Now, it shows pictures here of private jets. And when you think of the 1% in the United States, people often think of billionaires and things like that. But in reality, in the United States, that income threshold for a family is about $400,000, which is still incredibly high, but you're not flying private jets on that. Okay. And private jets really represent something like the top 1/1000th of the 1% typically. But this is 1% worldwide. Now, 1% worldwide represents, I think, about $40,000 per year. Okay, so it's a much lower number than people would have you believe. That'd be lower middle class in the United States. Um, Produces as much carbon emissions as the poorest two-thirds. So that 1% represents more carbon emissions than the 5 billion poorest people on the planet. And it's kind of an interesting perspective because the people who are making the money are the ones that are using the production of goods and services. And, it's just kind of an interesting thing to consider. Next article, we're going to talk a little bit about Toyota. So Toyota is one that sometimes has news in the EV industry, sometimes doesn't. This article, I'm not really sure about. This is from CarBuzz. Toyota solid state battery production won't be the game changer we hoped for. And they're talking about solid state batteries to going into production by 2027, but won't reach mass production anytime soon. They're looking There won't be enough Toyota solid-state batteries to power fully electric RAV4s. Toyota produces millions of vehicles yearly, so we're talking about a small percentage of the vehicles it makes. And one thing Toyota's been real big on is plug-in hybrids because instead of using a enormous battery, they might use a battery 1/10 the size, mix it with fuel, and have the hybrid vehicle, and then would have enough batteries to say put in 10 cars instead of one. And this is an issue they see coming up. There's a really sharp looking Lexus, which is a Toyota brand. And here is a Toyota. I don't know what model that is. But anyways, the automaker previously said their solid state batteries would power EVs with ranges of up to 600 miles by 2027. Those batteries would be able to be recharged in 10 minutes. Before that, they promised a 500-mile battery by 2026. Of course, these are still in the future, and further on, Toyota anticipates an all-electric range of 745 miles on a single charge. That would certainly eliminate range anxiety. Not many people are going to drive 700 miles in a single day. Not saying that doesn't happen, but it can. There's a sharp-looking Toyota electric truck. They don't give any information on this in the article. We suspect upcoming Toyota EVs like the Busy Forks crossover to continue using lithium-ion batteries. Well, we'll see where this goes. I mean, there's some sharp-looking cars. Toyota's the biggest car seller on the planet, so it's always interesting to see where they lead. Next news article: Can we not turn e-bikes into a regulatory nightmare? So one of the things that my co-host Bill is really big on is the big solution is more people riding e-bikes. And because it's single passenger vehicles, they take very little to power. They're really, you never take them to a gas station. You never take them somewhere really to charge them up. And one of the things is you can pedal them too, so, but in Marin County, California, they decided to make it illegal for people under age 16 from riding bikes with throttles because they have no idea what the rules of the road are. Police departments decided they would educate some violators instead of giving them citations. Now, what's interesting about this is cycle shops say that substandard bike infrastructure forces the bike riders onto the sidewalks. There was a case there where a child hit an elderly person with one of the e-bikes going too fast on the sidewalk. And the lack of bicycle lanes make it safer for the bicyclist to ride on the sidewalk. And so there's issues here that are tough sometimes to get around. But the problem with a lot of this is you don't want to when you start getting the government involved and you start legislating everything, then things go haywire because inevitably every law that gets passed has some negative unplanned effect that nobody foresaw when they put it in play. Now, I was mentioning earlier how BYD is currently outselling Tesla. Now, what's interesting here, this next article I'm going to talk about real quick is there is a $649 billion valuation gap between Tesla and BYD. Tesla's worth that much more than BYD. But in reality, BYD has really upped its sales. It has similar sales, units sold, things like that. This one analyst is trying to say that the price for Tesla, which is over $200 right now, is going to drop to 150, and the BYD is going to go up 60% in the same time period. That the prices of the two stocks are going to converge. Now, like I said earlier, Warren Buffett's company Berkshire Hathaway owns 8% of BYD, although they have trimmed their stake in it. Tesla's 435 million global EV deliveries. That's not 435,000. I don't know why they put million. They did not deliver 400 million vehicles. There's some errors in this article. Tesla's raked in 72 billion of year-to-date revenue and 7 billion profit. BYD brought in 59 billion revenue and 3 billion profit. China is a crucial market for Tesla. It's 22% of all revenue for the year. That's where BYD is really big. It's interesting in the top selling EVs, the Model Y is the best selling EV in the world, and the Model 3 is like number 5. And in the top 10, there's like 4 BYDs. In the top 20, there's a total of about 8. And it's really crazy how many spots they have there. Now, my next news article is what I consider to be fairly important. This is about China and electric buses. And I sometimes gotten some pushback on buses, but there's some staggering numbers here. So 15 cities in China to electrify all public vehicles. And they already have a fair amount of electric vehicles on the road. The aim is to get a total of 600,000 electric public sector vehicles on the city's roads, and this includes buses, sanitation vehicles, taxis, postal vans, and more. EVs currently make up 10% of such vehicles nationwide, behind the 30% overall market penetration. The one thing to realize, China is 5 times the size of the United States population-wise. So it's a much bigger market for vehicles. China has witnessed a surge in electric bus adoption in recent years. Between 2014 and 2022, the number of electric buses went from 37,000 to 529,000. There are only 6,000 electric buses in the United States. So you figure they have 100 times more electric buses. And I've had people criticize the idea of going electric on buses, but it makes sense because the buses, they go someplace where they can have the charging stations um, at the depot or wherever, they take the buses in for the night. They have a long enough range to drive around for the whole day without problem. And the pursuit of entirely electric mobility, public mobility brings challenges. Certain cities on their pilot list and face extremely cold winter weather. And that reduces your range by about 20% when it's really cold. There's systems now for keeping the batteries warm. So, anyways, that's kind of where that's going. I thought that was really interesting news. It's hard to fathom that there's already 500,000 electric buses running in China. My next article is about Nissan confirms 3 new EVs and its next gigafactory location. Now, this is more of a UK article, and that's a pretty cool futuristic looking Nissan there. Nissan's announcing a series of investments and plans for electrification. two new CUVs, and a brand new version of the Leaf, all three which will be produced in the UK at Nissan's Sunderland plant. In support of those plans, Nissan will be adding another gigafactory at Sunderland to enable production. Let's see, an EV version of the Qashqai. Not sure if I'm saying that right. It's the Rogue in the Rogue Sport in the US, and an EV version of the Juke. The Juke was discontinued in the US in 2018, but is still sold globally. The Juke was a car I had as a rental. I did not like it. And a replacement for the Nissan Leaf EV. And the Nissan Leaf has sold a million. There's been a million Leafs out there in the market. Anyways, I thought this was kind of interesting. Oh, here's a cool looking future Nissan. Nissan's been always been really good at having cutting edge designs on a lot of their cars. The hyper urban concept is what this one is called. Anyways, that one is pretty decent. Now, my next one is about the oil industry and large scale. This comes from Yahoo Finance, or large scale carbon capture an illusion for oil and gas companies. Now, one of the things is carbon capture implies pumping excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into areas that have been emptied in the earth, that where the oil has been pumped out, and they're pumping the carbon back in and capturing it in the ground. And this is kind of an interesting concept. It's that assuming fossil fuel consumption continues in our current projection, the oil and gas industry would need to capture and store an entirely inconceivable 32 billion tons of carbon and remove 23 billion tons via direct air capture by 2050 in order to stop the global temperature rising 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This would require more electricity than is used by the entire world today. The oil and gas companies employ nearly 12 million people worldwide, but they've been a marginal force at best in the clean energy transition, accounting just 1% of renewable investment globally. There needs to be $800 billion annual investment in fossil fuel production by 2030, and the industry, oh, they must have the current 800 billion annual investment, must slash its own operational emissions by 60% while increasing the proportion of its capital spending on renewables from 2.5% to 50%. Be interested to see how some of this plays out. A lot of people in the oil industry dismiss information on green energy and alternatives, and then a lot of them they actively look for ways to do carbon capture and to invest in green energy projects. So it's interesting to see where some of this will head. Now, this next article is kind of interesting in that uh, I'm not sure how this data is really aggregated, but this one, it has to do with the coal industry. U.S. coal plants killed 460,000 people between 1999 and 2020. That's 21 years. There'll be about 22,000 people per year died from excess deaths in the US attributable to coal pollution. Those deaths would have been avoided if all sulfur dioxide emissions from coal fired electricity plants were eliminated. Now, this is kind of interesting because that number represents more than double the murders in the United States, for example. So you'd think you'd be hearing more about this, about how coal is um, killing people. After 2007, annual excess deaths attributable to coal pollution fell, hitting around 1,600 in 2020, but they were higher between 99 and 2007 at about 43,000 per year. So apparently, a lot of reductions in emissions under the Clean Air Act significantly dropped these numbers. So now we're going from 43,000 around 2000 to around 1,600 20 years later. It's kind of an interesting concept, but to say that, uh, you know, you got to give it credit if it really has reduced those issues. And the last one we've got, and I've discussed this a little bit before, is the major benefits of owning an electric car. And this is quite interesting. And they're cheaper to drive than gas cars, saving money on fuel. And this article says a noise-free driving experience. Well, that really depends on the build quality of the car, okay? Because you don't necessarily hear the engine, but you still hear road noise. Charging an electric vehicle can be done at home, eliminating the need to visit a gas station, ensuring a fully charged battery each day. I mean, that's really the big thing, in my opinion, is being able to have the convenience of just plugging it in at home and never needing to go somewhere to charge the vehicle. Electric cars have lower maintenance costs due to their simplified design, fewer moving parts, and no need for regular oil changes. This results in reduced wear and tear and increased reliability. They do have one side effect. They do go through tires a little bit faster, starting to be tires designed specifically for electric vehicles, and these will certainly help out in the future. Anyways, I hope everybody enjoyed. This is our top 10 EV news articles. And if you've got some suggestions, ideas, please leave them in the comments. Love to hear what you have to say. And please like and subscribe. Certainly helps us if you hit that like button, and please comment if you've got something to let us know about. We love responding to comments and seeing what people have to say. Anyways, thanks.